Good afternoon to all dear students. So this live session is to answer the basic question as to how to choose the optional subject for the students who are aspiring to prepare for the UPSC examination. This is one of the fundamental questions that comes in the minds of all the aspirants. What kind of or what is the optional that I choose or I have to choose? And it could be a very difficult thing to find initially when you start preparing for the examination, because what is the criteria based on which I have to choose my optional? Is it based on my educational background? Is it based on the popularity of an optional, or is it based on the other factors? So this could be a question that can be there in your mind. So in order to address all such questions, in order to pinpoint as to what is the optional and how you'll have to choose a particular optional subject, we are doing this particular session. So I am Babu Gunashekaran, faculty for Indian Polity and Governance, StudyIQ English. I also secured All India rank 337 in Civil Service Examination 2016. So based on my experience in teaching and mentoring students for the last 10 years approximately, so I can tell you with precise details as to how one has to opt for his optional subject. What are the criteria one has to take into account? What are the things one has to avoid while choosing his optional subject? So that's the objective behind this particular video. But before I get into those details, so what is the objectives of this? So first let me give you the basic details as to what UPSC as an examination provides for, what are the various optionals available and other technical informations, and then basically what are the myths that the students suffer from, belief system that they have got which may not be true per se. So we'll have to first understand these myths, and after we understand these myths which we should not fall prey to, and then what are the objective parameters and the objectives criteria based on which the optional has to be chosen is what we will see. And then lastly, the do's and don'ts which the students should not commit while choosing their optional subject. Okay. So we'll try to understand and analyze all these things. So let me just go through all these things one by one. As we will proceed, we will understand all those things. But before I proceed, let me just give certain basic information with regard to the optional subjects. Why choosing this optional subject could be the most important decision in your civil services journey. We'll have to understand that. You might think that optional is just 500 marks. Out of the 1750 marks that I write for the mains examination, how important is choosing one's optional? It is just because 500 marks, anyways I have another 1250 marks? No. You will understand as I will discuss. Choosing optional is one of the most important choice, or it is one of the most important decision that you have to make in your civil service journey. So first of all, if you see this information, if you ask the question, how many optionals, are too many optionals for you to make a choice? If you see the UPSC notification 2023, you will understand that 48 optional subjects are there. So how many optional subjects? 48 optional subjects. And if you further divide this 48 optional subjects, you can divide them into 25 plus 23. So 25 optionals are from different streams, from the streams like social sciences, from science subjects like botany, physics, chemistry, social sciences like sociology, and then you have optionals like anthropology. There are a lot of social science papers. And then engineering background students can opt for engineering subjects, medical sciences, management, economics. So all these things would constitute 25 optional papers. So you have 25 subjects. So this 48 is further due to 25 from different streams, 25 optional papers. And then you have another 23 papers who are basically language papers. Certain important languages in our country has been identified. Tamil, Hindi, Marathi, languages of that sort has been identified along with the English paper. That also can be chosen as an optional subject. So if you cover these things, you have 48 optional papers. So that's a basic thing. When you when you're not given a choice, probably it is easy for you to make a decision. But the moment the choices are given, it becomes extremely difficult to make a decision. And not only to make a decision, and that decision has an important role in deciding your success in this examination. So that's why it becomes a very crucial decision as to how and what are the basis on which you are going to decide your optional subject. So 48 optional subjects, 25 from different subjects and all those things, and then 23 language papers including the English literature. So this can be chosen, and then whenever you choose an optional, then you have paper 1 and paper 2. So paper 1 and paper 2, and paper 1 and paper 2 each 250 marks. So that means the total mark is going to be 500 marks for which you will have to prepare. And so this is the mark. So paper 1, paper 2, so 500 marks is what you are going to prepare. And then what is or how you do compare between general studies vis-a-vis the optional. If you compare between general studies vis-a-vis the optional, you will understand a lot of things. Now we know that for general studies 4 papers are there, which means 250 into 4, 1000 marks vis-a-vis. So if you compare that with the optional, vis-a-vis the optional, you have 500 marks. So let me just make a correction of this. So for the general studies you have 1000 marks, but on the contrary for the optionals you have 500 marks. So which is more important? Is it more important that I will prepare well? It's not about the preparation per se, it's about how important is optional. Although optional is only 500 marks, whereas your general studies is 1000 marks. But still your optional has a very crucial role in determining your success. Why I would say that? Because you'll have to see the scoring trend in optional papers vis-a-vis the scoring trend in the GS papers. Getting 400 marks in GS out of your GS paper 1, GS paper 2, GS paper 3, GS paper 4 is an extremely difficult job. Or you can say few people, I think around less than 10% of the people who are clearing the, who are in the final list would get around 450 marks or more than 450 marks. Most of the people will fall somewhere between 350 to 400 marks, and maybe 20% of the people will score more than 400 marks. Maybe the top 10% of the people in GS might score more than 450 marks. That means the maximum score that you can take is somewhere between 400 to 450 marks. That means what is the average marks that you can score in GS? It is 45%. And to score anything more than 400 marks, you will have to do an extremely difficult work. You will have to do an extremely calculative work, and you will have to do extreme hard work in order to score more than this 400 marks, which is around 45% marks. But whereas if you see in your optional paper you can score somewhere around 350 marks. I am not saying everybody can score 350 marks, but people who are getting 350 marks are much higher. That means you can score up to what? You can score up to 70% of the marks in your optional paper. And it has also been a general trend that people who are clearing the examination, whoever is clearing the examination, whoever is there in the final list, I am talking about the people who are in the final list, the people who are there in the final list, they can score up to how much marks? So generally, if you see the general trend, the general trend is somewhere between 270 to 330 marks. So most of the people who get into the finalist, they score somewhere between 270 to 300 marks. That means on an average, they get more than somewhere between, you can understand that somewhere between 55% to 65% marks. And people get more than that also. And what all you need to clear your examination, you can understand that you need approximately 40 to 45% of the marks, not more than that in your overall score. 40% of the marks will also get through. So that means you can get up to 70% of the marks in your optional paper, and optional is also a subject which has a prescribed syllabus. GS doesn't, although there is a syllabus, but anything can be asked in the general studies. But once you prepare for the optional subject, it is very sure that your chances are very high to get into the finalist. So that's why it becomes extremely important to choose your optional subjects very correctly. So what is the basis on which one has to choose their optional subject? So that can be a question in number of minds of number of aspirants, and this session is basically to clarify that particular doubt that may have in their mind. So we'll proceed further and we'll try to understand as to what exactly are the parameters and what exactly are the do's and don'ts one has to do and one has to avoid while choosing their optional subject. And before that, basically there are certain myths that you will have to understand and you will have to avoid while choosing the optional subject. So we'll deal with all those things as we'll proceed further. So optional is very important for the students in order to be successful at the earliest in their preparation process. So before I proceed, I'll just make a small announcement about the course that StudyIQ is launching. So StudyIQ for the first time is launching its Prelims to Interview batch. When I say Prelims to Interview, as the name suggests, so this is a program that covers everything that is required for an aspirant to clear this examination, right from the preliminary examination stage until the interview stage. So you might be aware of the three stages of the examination: prelims, mains and the interview. And if you look into the this particular prelims to interview program which StudyIQ has launched, it includes everything right from 1000 hours of live classes, which is basically to build your foundation. In addition to that, it has got success in prelims crash course before your prelims examination. It has got success in mains crash course before your mains examination. And students who are clearing their prelims and willing to come to a mains residential program, they can also come and they can be part of a mains residential program which covers entire lodging and boarding at free of cost, and an exclusive training will be given to the students in the mains residential program. And then apart from that, there is a year-long mentorship program. Year-long mentorship is there, and apart from all these things, the students can also get regular PDFs for their revision, and also the current affairs is part of this particular program. So these are all the various features of this particular program. For more information, you can visit the StudyIQ website, and there you can download the brochure for more information. And if you are interested in this particular course, you can make your admissions, and the programs are going to commence from 19th of June 2023. And what is special with this particular program, apart from all the features, now the students are given option to join in any of the streams, in any of the verticals in which they wanted to join. There is an exclusive English batch where all the deliverables will be done in English, and then there is an exclusive Hindi batch where all the deliverables will be in Hindi. And then there is also a hybrid batch which is a combination of both English as well as Hindi. So the delivery will be in English, which is combination of both English as well as Hindi. So students who wanted that batch, they can also join the English batch. And all these batches are likely to commence from 19th of June 2023, and which would be an online batch. And if you want an additional discount, the price of this particular course is 70,000. If you want an additional discount on this, you can use the code Babu Live, and if you use the code Babu Live, the price of this course would be 29,999. So for any queries, you can also reach out to the team, and you can get your queries cleared. Okay. So with this, I'll just go on to the discussion that you have been saying as to how to choose an optional subject. So before I proceed further, the importance of the main subject should be clear by this time. So the importance of the optional should be very clear by this time. So to proceed further, and we'll have to understand as to what are the basic myths, the false belief system that one might have while choosing their optional subject, which you as a student should basically avoid. So that's the idea. So basically, what are the myths that one has to avoid? So first is, there are certain popular subjects, that there are certain subjects which are popular than the other subjects. It might be popular because of the number of students who are taking it, but otherwise UPSC doesn't have a popular option. From the point of view of UPSC, UPSC does not discriminate between the optionals in terms of popularity or in terms of marking. So that is not the case. So don't have to worry about it. So my basic idea here is, you should not choose a particular optional just because the optional is taken by number of other candidates. That's not the criteria that you should choose an optional. So basically, you should have an understanding that nothing is called as a popular subject. In fact, UPSC is neutral to all the optionals. Yes, there may be few years selections can be more from a particular optional because more number of students have chosen that particular optional. It not necessarily that UPSC is promoting that particular optional. So that is a wrong thing. So it is nothing like an optional is popular than another optional. Certain optionals are scoring, that is again a myth. So many times people say, or the students take a particular optional because they say this is scoring optional. So nothing is again a scoring optional. People have equally cleared from all the papers. Students have taken the literature optional, students have taken the mathematics optional, students have taken other social science papers. So everything from every optional students have cleared, and students have failed taking all the optionals as well. So there is nothing called a scoring optional. So you cannot just select an optional thinking that it is a scoring optional. No, unless and until, irrespective of the optional, you do your work, you cannot score in that particular optional. So that is again a myth. And then the third myth which usually students find which is common among the students is that I should take an optional where I have gotten background. So probably I have done my UG, undergraduation or post graduation from a particular subject. So probably I should take that particular optional. Nothing wrong in that. If you make such a decision, nothing wrong in that. But see, that should not be the sole criteria. Probably you have not planned for UPSC when you joined a course, and probably the course that you are doing, you are not interested in that particular subject. And just because you are having a background in that particular subject, you cannot choose that particular optional, because the amount of time that you are going to spend and the volume of things that you have to read is going to be enormous, and hence without interest you cannot take that particular optional. So just because you have background, if you have an interest in that particular subject, on top of that there is also background, then it is an added advantage. But otherwise, just because the background, if I am going to take that particular optional, that is not the right thing. In fact, you see number of students from engineering background, they do not take the engineering subjects. Number of students even from the medical background, they do not take the medical background. Yes, there may be students who can take it, but it is not the criteria as to how you will have to pick your optional. So this is the third myth that I wanted to make clear, that yes, I should have a background to choose a particular optional. No, in fact, most of the social science subjects are taken by students who doesn't have any background in that. So these are the basic myths that first you will have to break. You will have to identify and you will have to break that. Not necessarily there are popular subjects, not necessarily that there are certain optionals which are scoring than the other optionals. Not necessarily I should have a UG or a PG background to select a optional. No. So if you think this right now, put an end to this, make it very clear in your mind. No, these are not the things based on which I am going to select the optionals. Then what are the factors, what are the parameters, or what are the criteria based on which I have to choose my optional? So this is the most important part of the session. So let us try to understand what are the parameters one has to take into account, the students have to take into account, based on which, okay, they will identify, okay, this is the optional that is good for me. The first and foremost thing is the interest over the subject. So you will have to ask yourself this particular question. So this is a particular optional that I am going to read, say, for the next 1 year. Ideally, I would say you should start your preparation 1 year before the year on which you are planning to write your examination. Suppose you are planning to do it in 2024, so probably 8 to 10 months before that you will have to start your preparation, because it takes around 8 to 10 months to complete your foundation. In the meantime also you should complete your optional. So the ideal time to prepare for your optional subject is even before you write your prelims examination. I am not saying that you should not do after your prelims, but then it is very unlikely that you may get into the interview test or in the personality test or the interview of the UPSC examination, because it takes a lot of time to prepare for your optional. So the time after your prelims has to be dedicated for the complete revision and consolidation of whatever you have already read. So ideally you should prepare and you should complete your optional before your prelims itself. That's the best way of doing, and that's the best way of going for the prelims. So it can be before 1 year or 2 years according to your own plan, but at least before 1 year of your prelims examination, you should have started your preparation and you should have completed your optional subject as well. So now coming to the question of interest over the subject, the first and the foremost criteria, and I also prioritized the criteria or the parameters. So this is the priority on which we will have to see that. So what is the interest that I have a particular subject? So what the students have to do? So probably they have to look for the list of optionals. You know that there are 48 optionals that I have said. So probably what you can do is, let us assume that you are thinking of some social science subjects. Let us take the example of sociology. or let us take the example of anthropology, or let us take the example of the psychology. Now, these are all some of the optionals that is there in UPSC examination. So, probably the students have to go through few chapters in the NCERT books, because there are NCERT books which has an overlap with the syllabus of these subjects. Go through those NCERTs, or go through some of the standard books. So, probably if the NCERT is not there, go through some of the basic books from that particular subject. See that whether you have an interest in this particular subject. When I say interest, I am not talking about the capability. The capability is different from what is the interest. So, capability is something that you will be able to do it, but interest in something that you like it, you like doing it, or you like doing it more over the other things. So, you should have an interest. So, how would you identify whether you have an interest or not? So, probably you will have to read the basic books. You will have to identify the basic books and try to read the basic books, read it for a couple of weeks, even 1 month before you make this particular decision. So, when you read it, you try to come to a conclusion that whether I like reading this particular subject, can I read this particular subject very much? Say for example, when I was starting to prepare for my UPSC examination, so whenever I felt like reading it, I just started reading the Indian polity rather than reading the other subjects. I felt more interest in Indian polity rather than any of the other subjects. It does not mean that I cannot read the other subjects. I can read the other subjects, I can understand, I can comprehend the other subjects. But reading Indian polity made me little happier, more happier than reading the other subjects. I felt like I am learning something new. So, this is the way that you will have to see that which subject is making you happier while reading it, which you like it while reading it. So, that is the first and foremost criteria based on which you will have to choose your optional subject. Okay, all right. So, now you can narrow down to 3-4 optional subjects in this way. So, it might be possible that 3-4 optional subjects you can narrow down. So, once you narrow down to 3-4 optional subjects, which is again a laborious process, but invest time in this, because once you made the right decision, then remaining things could be little easier for you, and rest if you do it properly, it is assured that you will also be successful in the examination. So, narrow down yourself to 3-4 optionals, and then the next thing that you have to say is what is your skill set to proceed further. Is your skill set matching with the requirement of this particular optional? When I say skill set, say for example, there can be certain subjects, say let us take the example of history. If you take the example of history optional, it requires it requires a lot of, there's optional as a subject as, per se, it demands to remember a lot of things. You will have to remember a lot of years, you will have to remember a lot of facts, a lot of names. So, are you good in memorizing, are you good in remembering these things? So, that is basically your skill set. Okay, I have this particular skill. Let us take the example of psychology. So, there are a lot of theories that you have to remember, and the language can be little complex. Okay, take the example of public administration. If you take public administration, you will have to link it paper 1 and paper 2. So, there should be a lot of linkage. So, this is also true for psychology also. Paper 1 and paper 2, there is a lot of linkage, and you take the example of public administration, not only you will have to link paper 1 and paper 2, you will have to link that with a number of contemporary issues, that is the current events that is happening. There may be few papers where your writing skill has to be excellently good. It cannot just be reproduced from the books. You will have to write it in an analytical manner. So, these are all the skill set. So, do we have the memory power? Can I read more? Can I assimilate all these information? Can I remember a lot of facts? Can I be analytical? Do I have good writing skills for this particular paper? Because certain papers require more writing skills, especially take the example of psychology, writing answers to paper 2, because paper 2 you do not have a proper textbook. So, it is basically the understanding of paper 1, and with examples you will have to do the paper 2. So, do I have that particular skill? So, this is what is the analysis that you have to make as to what is the skill set that I have. Okay, I have narrowed down 3-4 optionals, and what is very closely coming to matching to my skill set, then you will have to go for that particular optional. So, the second thing that you have to do is skill set. So, skill set means your ability to comprehend that particular subject, your ability to remember that particular information, and your ability to write and reproduce such information. So, all these things are basically what is called as a skill set, because not every paper requires the same skill set. Say for example, mathematics, you do not have to remember per se a lot of things, but probably you will have to be very good in analytical skills and all those things. But for certain papers, you should be good in writing the answers, especially the social science papers. History, you will have to remember a lot of things, you will have to remember a lot of names, facts and all those things. Are you good at that? So this is what I mean by the skill set. So first is the interest over the subject, second is a skill set. Then the third thing is the availability of the resources. When I say availability of the resources, it includes a number of things. It includes the availability of teachers, it includes the availability of mentors, it includes the availability of books and the other materials, it includes the availability of test series. So all those things can be part of the availability of resources. So the third criteria that you have to take into account. Okay, once you have chosen, okay, this is I have an interest, also have the required skill set, then you have to look for whether the other support is there with regard to these things. Okay, this is also there. Then you can also look into to what extent this particular subject is overlapping with the general study subject. So probably to what extent, take the example optional subjects like history. It has a lot of overlap with your general studies paper. Take the example of geography, it has an overlap. Take the example of the public administration, it does have an overlap. Take the example of sociology, it does have an overlap. So there are few optional subjects which also has an overlap. But let us assume there is an overlap. Let us assume, take the example of history or any of the other optional, geography. It has an overlap with the general study subject, but you do not have an interest or you feel that your skill set is not okay with this particular optional. Then that's not a good idea that just because that there is an overlap with the general study subject, you will pick that particular option. That's a very bad decision to make. You should not make the decision. You have an interest in the subject, let us assume mathematics, and you have the skill set also. You also identify the resources which is required, but there is no overlap with the GS. Still you can go for it because this is the priority with which you will have to do it. So why I say that the interest is the foremost important thing, because for the next 1 year or so you are just going to read this particular subject and you cannot read that subject extensively without having an interest in that particular subject. As I already said, capability is something different. With capability you can still do it, but without interest, and then automatically your efficiency and your performance will vary. You do something just because you can do it and you do something because you like it. There is a difference between these two things. So then yes, if all the three things are there, you have an interest in the subject, your skill set is also there, and you have also identified the required resources. On top of that, it also has an overlap. It is like an icing on the cake. It's an advantage for you. Okay, so that is also a good thing. And then you can also look into the syllabus. There are few subjects which has a vast syllabus. Take the example of history, the syllabus is so vast. And take the example of some of the papers like sociology, or for that matter public administration, the syllabus is very less. Political science, again vast. So again you can take into consideration the syllabus, but yes, but provided you have an interest, you have the skill set, you have identified the resources. But if the syllabus is vast, it's all right. That doesn't matter because you like doing it and you will be in a position to do that. Do not choose a particular optional just because the syllabus is less. Do not pick a particular optional just because it overlaps with the general study subject. That is not the right approach. So the priority is first your interest. Try to assess your interest, try to assess your skill set, try to identify the other support system. On top of that, then you can go for these options. So this is the way that you'll have to identify your optional subject. This is the way you have to zero in on your optional subject. And if you do this, then your success is almost assured. If you keep doing your work after that, almost assured you can end up somewhere between 330 to 350 marks. So this is not something which is not achievable, and this is almost what, 65% to 70% of the marks. All that you need is another 330 marks or 350 marks to get a call for your interview test. Now the biggest problem with the students is that they end up making some mistakes. So what are the do's and don'ts that the students have to make sure? What are the things that they have to do and what are the things that they have to avoid while choosing their optional subjects? So what are the do's? I say the do's are that they have to make a rational decision. It should not be an emotional decision, it should be a rational decision when they make a choice, and only a rational decision can lead them to success in this examination, not an emotional decision. So what do you mean, or what do you understand by a rational decision? A rational decision is a decision which is based on all these parameters. So you'll have to identify all these things. Do I have the interest to read this particular subject? Is my skill set matching with this particular subject? And is the availability of resources are there? Is there an overlap with the general study subject? Is the syllabus, is it vast or is it good enough for me to go with this particular subject? So once you identify all those things, then it becomes what? It becomes a rational decision. So, all the decision that you have to make, it has to be rational in nature. So, do make a rational decision and a rational choice when you choose your optional subject. And what are the don'ts? This is something that the students have to avoid. And what are the things that they have to avoid? They cannot make any hasty decisions. So, do not make decisions in haste. Try to spend some time, even if it is going to take a month or two, take your time, because once you take your time and once you make the decision properly, almost half of your job is already done. Just that you'll have to keep reading the subject and to understand and to further know as to how to clear and how to write a good answer. But hasty decision can land up you in big trouble, because after a year, if you want to again change your optional, then you'll have to start it from the scratch. So, never ever do this particular mistake of acting in haste and then don't think that I have to change this particular subject. So, that is a completely a bad decision to make. Okay, so do not act in haste and do not fall prey to the popularity theory. Number of students make this mistake. They take optional just because optional is popular. The optional, as I already said, is not popular. UPSC does not promote any optional. It is not the agenda on the part of the UPSC to promote one optional over the other optionals. It's just that over a period of time, people might start liking certain optionals, or people, because of the availability of faculty or something, they start taking one optional over the other optionals. It doesn't mean that it is a popular option. And that should not be the basis on which you will have to choose that particular optional. It has to be basically based on your skill set. And then on top of the skill set and your interest, basically the interest and the skill set, on top of that, then an option is popular, you can do that. There is no harm in that, but just because the optional is popular, you should not take a particular optional. Then there is something which is called as background effect. So, background effect is I have done my PG in this particular subject, so I will take this particular option. Nothing wrong in doing that, but provided that you have an interest in that particular subject. So, probably you have done your PG where you are not interested in reading that particular subject, then do not take that particular optional just because you already invested time and you already have a background in that particular option. That is again a very bad approach to do. And then general studies effect. Now, many students during the conversation, I find that when I ask them that, they say that I have taken this optional because it has an overlap in the GS. So, that is a good thing. It may reduce your burden while reading the GS, but that is not the approach you should follow. So, general studies effect is something that you have to avoid while choosing the optionals. So, it has to be basically based on your skill set and your interest. These are the two priorities based on which you will have to decide. So, these are the some of the don'ts that you have to avoid while choosing the optional subject. So, how I will choose my optional subject? So, first of all, let's see whether you have an interest in that particular subject. If you have an interest, try to identify your skill set. If your skill set is also matching with the demand of that particular subject, when I say demand of that particular subject, see the questions that has been coming in the UPSC examination and what type of questions they are coming and what type of answers are expected for that particular question. Is it an analytical question? Is it just reproduction of facts? So, try to identify these things, and once your skill set match, then you can also try to identify the various resources that is available, whether the accessibility to these resources is easy or not. And then subsequently, you can also see to what extent it overlaps with the general studies, and then you can also see the other parameters and factors based on which you can decide. If you follow these parameters, this is how you make a rational decision. And once you make a rational decision, your chances that you be more successful in the examination. So, this is the idea behind this particular short video, is to help you and how to make a rational decision in choosing your optional. Okay. So, if you want any queries, if you have any queries, you can always contact me through my Telegram channel and also through my Instagram account, that is Babu Gunashekaran 337. So, I will be happy to know your queries and to answer to your queries. All the very best. I wish all the students who are preparing for the civil service examination or who make up a choice to prepare for this examination as success in the coming years. All the very best. Thank you very much. God bless.